Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Ghosts, specters, encounters with the unnatural. I don't think it's much of a stretch at all to believe at the right time, at the right area, you can walk into the right area and encounter spirit of Bigfoot, whatever paranormal creature you like, maybe even a zombie or a vampire. Now, this is based off partially my own experience and partially from years of interest in the subject. My own experience, you may be thinking, but Silverlight, you admitted the other day you have hallucinations. Let me finish. Back in 1997, my friends and I were, you know what it is. You're in university, you're enjoying yourself, and somebody says, "Hey, let's do X." Well, in our activity, X was to go to a graveyard and take pictures. And in our hearts, we all did not believe we would find anything. After all, it's a graveyard. It's not somewhere that you're going to wind up finding anything that you want because nobody's there. It was like 11 o'clock at night, maybe 10 o'clock at night. It's a quiet part of town. I didn't realize the joke there until I said it. And so we went off, armed with my trusty 35 millimeter. What was it? I think it was a Canon back then. And off we went on our adventure. Well, it was a very windy night. And I mean extremely windy. We did have smokers in the group, but they were mostly behind me and they weren't smoking at this particular point. We were trying to be respectful. You're in a graveyard, close to midnight, and just trying to be respectful. There's plenty of time for all that stuff later. Well, I finish off one roll of pictures and I found a second. Well, I put in more camera and I started snapping stuff on the second roll. This is in the days where you had to take your stuff to Walmart, to Kmart, wherever had a photo studio, and get it developed. Well, the last picture on my first roll, and like the third or fourth on my second roll, we got a very interesting result. Remember, I said it was a very cloudy day, and there are clearly smoky images in um, these pictures. I plan to include a link to them in the description down below. There will be a password. The password is going to be for you, FORYOU. And because the only website I can get them off of requires a password. Maybe I'll transfer them somewhere else. There'll be a link in the description. I'll put the password down there. Now, I have no way of explaining this. I even took them to the more sciencey types, and they shot some good explanations, but it was the windy night that shot almost everything down. Like I said, very clever, very talented other students that I was talking to. So, since nobody was smoking at the time. We did have smokers with us, but they weren't smoking. And the wind was significant. We couldn't find a single explanation. Somebody said it might be the smoke from, a chimney nearby. Well, we were kind of in the middle of this cemetery, and it was a decent size. It still is a decent size. Like, you could go for a walk in there if you don't mind the morbid nature of what you're going through. That's not the point, though. The point is, I have seen the supernatural, and that's not the only occurrence. So why is this something we can't find every single day? I mean, I can go out every single day and find a squirrel. I can go out every single day and find a car. These are well-known, trustable scientific facts. Well, science is an amazing instrument for measuring and quantifying. I mean, if I say I have 10 rocks, you understand immediately I have 10 rocks. Your next question would probably be why I have 10 rocks. But we can easily understand, yes, at this point in this time, I have 10 rocks. And science is amazing. Science and math are amazing at working that out. But even the most hardcore dedicated mathematician or scientist is going to tell you they can't explain everything. And the supernatural is a mercurial phenomena anyways. It follows its own rules. It's not going to listen to you because you're not my daddy. I have come to accept. Okay, we talked about UFOs yesterday. UFOs are in the paranormal as well. At least in my opinion, since I don't really think anybody's traveling this far to either say, hey, how you doing? Because, you can send radio waves, and if you have something more advanced, you send that. And I think the paranormal is much the same way. Kind of think of life as a pond. And the human race and everything else are ducks on that pond. Now, they do interact with it in 3 dimensions, but underneath the pond, there's all sorts of creepy crap. You may or may not have remains of deceased anything. And there are instances where those can be jarred loose from the bottom, come out, float for a little bit, then sink back to the bottom. It's breaking that plane between what's there. And I admit I'm allowing my predisposition to believe to intrude on my logic here. I'm assuming there's some sort of veil between regular reality and supernormal reality. But it's a good assumption. There's an astonishing amount of anecdotal evidence for Bigfoot, excuse me, Sasquatch, for ghosts, for UFOs. If this were a court case, I could win it just on that circumstantial evidence. Because in non-criminal law, you only have to prove, well, you don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You only have to prove a preponderance of evidence. That's for your civil lawsuits and stuff like that. And there's enough stories and stuff like that that you can easily prove that the preponderance of evidence shows this stuff happens. Now, we know websites like Reddit and stuff like that, there's trolls on them. They'll make things up. But most people are there to share a good story, a good anecdote, or to get advice on what they should do. And I'm going to make the foolish but necessary assumption that at least 50% are true. Because it would be impossible to survey Reddit and ask people, are you telling the truth? Of course they're going to say yes. Well, you might get an honest person here or there, but most people are going to say yes. For easy shorthand, we're going to say 50%. So that would mean this stuff, these spirits and spooks and ghouls and stuff, exist somewhere. There have been encounters with them. And I would even say it's possible for them to leave physical evidence behind. Not always, actually in a minority of cases. But the fact is, we still have physical evidence. Now, I'm not saying abandon your faith. Listen to me. I'm saying open your mind just a little to let this come in. Don't follow people blindly. Um, Major Ed Dames. I used to love listening to him to Art Bell because he could weave a good story. But his remote viewing techniques, he was never right. Not once. And that's kind of why I don't listen to Coast anymore, is because George Noory lets all these people on and, oh, I've seen that and everything. He's I'm not going to say gullible, but he's playing to his audience to a destructive way. I'm talking to you about ghosts and spirits. I spoke to you about yesterday's. I haven't insulted your intelligence once by saying, "Ooh, yeah, behind that veil is everything that we ever want to know." Well, show me the veil. Well, I can't. It's immaterial. I'm treating you like an intelligent individual because I'd like to be treated like that myself. Your results may vary with me. But if we accept this pond analogy and what's beneath the pond, the ducks aren't really going to go after it. Although actually the ducks would because they're fishers by heart. Maybe a duck was not the best analogy. Swimmers tend not to go down far. Yeah, I'm stretching it now. I'm trying to stretch it to justify an error figured out myself. But what we can say, excuse me, what we can say is we know there's something underneath the surface. We don't know anything about how to breach that surface, unlike the ducks who are very good at it. We don't know anything about how we could survey the bottom and figure out what's down there, unlike the ducks and unlike humans if they want to invest the money. So this is an analogy, but think of it as the surface of reality. We're all based in it, but there's a whole other level underneath it. Now, maybe spirits are what we think they are, and they're replaying a script. They're coming back to fulfill a message or a prophecy. These are all hardwired into our collective unconscious. It shows up in stories. It's not a meme, but it's just something that is prevalent in our society. There's a word here I'm looking for. I can't figure it out. But most things get into our minds for a reason. When you're alone in the woods and somebody's telling the story of the the vampire wolf man, you're out there in the woods. Your perception is slightly altered because it's dark. There's a fire. We're kind of retreating back into the days of our deep ancestors. And I'm not talking cavemen. I'm talking for as long as humans have been able to talk and share experiences. This might be millions of years. We're recreating that environment. And we've seen children telling ghost stories and scaring each other so bad they see what they think is the wolfman. Now it's a trick of shadows and the light, but it's real to that child for that moment. It's tangible, it's undeniable, and once one child sees it, another one can. Well, adults are the same way. If I tell you you're going into a haunted house, you're expecting an old, creaky, run-down place. You don't think of the mansions of England necessarily. You're thinking of just this discombobulated, disheveled, old residence. That changes your mentality. Now, changing your mentality is not a mental disease. It was fundamental to our ancestors to be using the full set of their senses. People today don't do that. And I'm not complaining about the people on their phone, on their whatever it is, staring at it rather than the road. I'm talking about people use their sight primarily, but their smell and their ears they completely ignore. I know this personally because my eyes are rather bad, but my ears and my smell work extremely well. I freak people out sometimes when I'll ask them, do you hear whatever it is? And like a minute later, it'll come into range for them. But I live in a slightly different reality than most people. Everybody does. No two realities match. But if I set the stage to where you've primed your senses to maybe see behind the veil, sometimes you're going to see something. Sometimes you're not. Some people have such a strong grip on themselves and their reality, they would never see a ghost, a specter, or anything like that. They would only see what they expect to see in an old, broken down house. Maybe some stray cats using it for shelter, maybe some rats, all those types of things. Whereas other people would hear the pitter patter of feet, and since they weren't tuning into it, it seems to them to be steps. That's normal. But other people are able to open their ears and eyes enough to be able to see and hear just slightly better than normal. And that's when the spirits can appear to them. The ghosts are real. They don't appear everywhere. They appear where that veil between us and the paranormal is relatively weak. We know that because they tend to appear over and over again in the same spots. We also know not everybody sees ghosts even when they're in the same spot at the same time. But we need to think about this as a paranormal activity. It's beyond the normal. It's something special. And it's something nobody's really testing, aside from the people that go in there with their electromagnetic detectors and temperature finders. They're trying. I at least give most of them credit. They're trying. But most of that stuff, it's like hearing your echo. There is a physical mechanism for it. We don't understand it. And, electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, are not evidence. But people keep recording them, bringing them up. No, there is a paranormal presence in the world. It's something we must pay attention to because it might contain a lot of secrets that we don't even know about. Let's get to measuring that to the best of our abilities and developing ideas there. And it's going to be hard. The paranormal doesn't obey your rules. It's coming from beyond the veil. And it's going to do what it wants to do. We need to adapt as human beings so we can really investigate this. And the onus is on us. Paranormal has existed for goodness knows how long, at least a few million years, if not longer. And it's us that needs to change our thinking about it. Have an open mind. Don't replace your values with this. Don't fall in behind some mad person. Mad person just doesn't have the same oomph as a madman does. But who claims to see spirits and wants to take all your money? No, but just have your mind's eye open enough that when something mysterious happens, you're there to catch it. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification icon because that's, well, you'll enjoy being informed every time that there's a new episode for the Silverlight Show. And we hope you have a fantastic day.